welcome back to Glitter and Chaos. I'm your host, Caitlin Mead.
I'm your other host, Kaylee.
Okay, then. We are excited to join you again and hope you enjoyed episode 1 where we reflected on the journey to get to Glitter and Chaos and talking about mental health in America and what that looks like, what access to care looks like, where our nation is when it comes to mental health, specifically where the state of Kansas is, because that's where we are doing this from.
Yes.
And so that brings us into episode 2.
Three.
We're on episode 3. Episode 3 of talking about really kind of getting a little more specific into adults and youth dealing with mental health and where we go from here.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And so this is somewhat of a continuation of what we started in the last episode. We're still breaking down that Mental Health America report. This one, I mean, we're gonna discuss a few other statistics that we wanted to just kind of discuss, dialogue on, but then we also want to talk about where we think we can go from here. So like we had said last time, there was some great news and there were some bright spots out of this report, not only for Kansas, but for the United States in general. And, so how can we continue that momentum? What can we do not only locally, but maybe globally to help maintain the gains that we've got and then also add to those gains as well? And so one of the stats that we pulled out was 40% of adults at any point in time, can, with any sort of mental health challenge, experience the mental health challenge. So that's 40% of the adults, or 60 million of the United States population. And in Kansas, so obviously Kansas is a lot smaller than some of the other states that were, queried in this. That translated to about 519,000. So on that whole list of 1 to 51, we were number 23. So we kind of right in the middle,
Which isn't
ish.
I mean, it's not terrible. It's better than where I think I thought we would lie.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we're in a rural area, and so
Yes.
I think that
changes
our
perspective.
things and how we look at things, how we see things, because we see things on a lot smaller scale, and so it's a lot more microscopic to us, but also a lot more the problem seems a lot bigger.
Yeah. And I don't know, I agree with that. Yes, it is microscopic. We see a lot of different presentations. And I don't know, maybe that's just because we are in a small area, in a rural area. We do see a lot of different variabilities, to where I just remember in some of the previous places we've been, when we would talk to other providers out in larger cities, more urban, larger, places, they'd be like, what do you mean? What do you mean that you're seeing some of these presentations? And we're like, this is what we're seeing. And they're like, I don't really treat that, or I haven't really seen it. And so it's like, we're already isolated, because when we're going to this provider or this, person outside of the facility that we were working, they were like, well, do you have this? No. Do you have this? No. Do you have this? No. Okay. I'm like, if for reference, the nearest Walmart to where we're located right now is a half hour. To get it even further into perspective, the nearest Target from us right now is an hour. And when you tell that to someone who's lived in a city probably most of their life, or has never really experienced rural living, they're like, what do you mean? What do you mean?
The real fun one is when Amazon Prime doesn't get here in 2 days.
Yes.
Like that, the 2-day shipping does not apply to this area. And Kaylee's right. It's well, what do you mean? Well, we don't get grocery delivery. It's we schedule grocery pickup. We're scheduling hey, I got to make a 30-minute drive, and if I'm there, I might as well do A, B, C, D, and E. I always joke with my husband that me going to the larger city is like a field trip for me. I plan that whole day. That's my whole day. It's a field trip. And I have a good friend that's like, it's like you coming to Topeka is like Christmas. And I'm like, because it is. It's like my day to myself, and I get to go do things. But, getting back to that, Kaylee putting that into perspective, we don't have the resources that the bigger cities like Kansas City or Topeka or
Wichita,
Wichita, like those places have. We don't have just access to all of these intensive outpatient services or things like that. We do have services. I don't want to say that we don't, because we do. Obviously, you have 2 providers here, and and throwing that out there, I don't think Kaylee and I ever really officially introduced like what we do, like what our credentials.
No, we did at the very beginning.
We did at the very beginning.
I'm pretty sure we did.
Okay. Well,
it's all a blur.
It's all a blur. If we didn't, I'm a licensed clinical professional counselor and registered play therapist.
I'm a licensed clinical marriage and family therapist.
Okay, so there you go. So we, you have that, and we also have other providers in the area who are licensed providers. But the problem is that we all have extensive wait lists, and we don't have. Like, okay, well, you can go do intensive outpatient treatment over here. Well, the closest intensive outpatient treatment is in Topeka, which is an hour away.
Yeah. Which causes which puts, for families, for individuals, puts a lot of barriers in place to accessing different levels of care. And I think that that's what we're talking about. And when we're looking for resources, it's like, well, where is your, nearest food pantry? Where is your nearest, community health building? Where is your nearest, I don't know, office, like a social work office of some sort. And it's like, we have some of those luckily here. We do have a great, health department. We do have a great food pantry here, but we are probably one of the lucky, in the rural frontier areas, probably the lucky few. Not every town is going to have that. Not every city is going to have that. And so we're very lucky on that. But that's when we're like, well, we're looking to help, these outcomes. And so when we're looking at how people are impacted, and we're looking at earlier intervention, it's all of these systemic things that we have to think about. How can we help this person thrive? How can we get them out of survival mode enough to where we can, address the anxiety, depression, or any other mental health challenge that they're experiencing, but how can we also help them thrive? And I think that that's kind of what we're talking about, is there are so many barriers sometimes in a frontier and rural area that it's hard to look at it systemically when there are sometimes no systemic opportunities in place. And that's not for lack of want, because we have had multiple conversations with tons of community members, both personal and professional, that are like, it would be great if we had this. It would be awesome if we had this. And then it's trying to figure out how to get that done in a way that is helpful and organized. And, and it's just hard. It is just very hard, because we are all just one person. We have our schedule of things that we have to do, that we want to do. And then it's also trying to take care of the community as well.
Right. Yeah. And it is a community effort. And luckily we live in a great community that is very much behind that. But it does come back to kind of like what Kaylee was saying. We are a frontier area, and they still do consider it a frontier area because
we are rural.
Well, we are rural,
yes.
But I guess what I'm getting at is pushing to get those things here is a frontier idea.
Yeah. Okay.
In the fact that we, I think sometimes the rural areas are often forgotten, because it's just, well, if you want things, if you need help, you can go to these places. You can, you can go to the big city. You can go to Kansas City. You can go to Topeka. You can go to Wichita. But, people have jobs. People have families. People, things are expensive. Gas is expensive. Things, there's not enough time in the day. And getting those resources out here is what we're really pushing for and what we're wanting to push for. But there are a lot of challenges that come with that. There's a lot of who wants to move out here to start those things.
If you don't have some sort of connection and or familial relation or of that, it's a big adjustment if you've lived in a bigger urban kind of areas to adjust to small rural life. And you often don't see a lot of people migrate to the rural areas. Now, there have been a lot of great initiatives that have helped people move to the rural areas, both locally and statewide, to help, attract quality, providers and things
Right.
like that, or just attract people to smaller towns. So I'm very thankful that those programs exist, because then that helps us, get good and quality providers and supports for people in rural and frontier areas.
But you bring up like, unless you have the familial thing and the adjustment it is, like personally it's an adjustment. I grew up in Dallas. Like, I grew up in a very big suburb, like just metro. Like, I was like metropolitan, big area, and I married someone from this area and moved here. And talk about culture shock, like like
yeah, Dallas,
big culture shock. That going from that, and there was a time in between there where I lived in different places, obviously for college and things like that. But when you spend the majority of your life in a metropolitan area, and then you move to where your town is literally like in the middle of a cornfield, it is a huge adjustment, and it's a wonderful adjustment. I mean, I love this culture. Like, this is a great culture to live in, and I think that's why we're so passionate about bringing things here, because this is our community, and this is a great place to live. This is at least from my perspective, like, this is exactly where I want to be, where I want my family to be. It's a great sense of community, and it's just, but these people, this community needs and deserves to have the access to those things just as much as our big metro areas do too. And that's where our passion lies.
Absolutely. Identifying barriers, seeing if there's any way that we can adjust and or remove the barrier if at all possible, so access of care can be established. So when we look at some of those similar statistics of like the 60% of adults in the United States, alternatively with youth, they were reporting more or less about 2.8 million youth at any point that were experiencing a mental health challenge. This one kind of talked a little bit more about the depressive piece of it, but they were saying that those 2.8 million youth was experiencing it severely enough that it was impacting their daily lives. Like, they were struggling to go to school, they would struggle to maybe do sports or engage in hobbies or contribute to the family and things like that. But on the flip side of that, they also did have a good statistic that was saying 298,652 youth also were flourishing within this parameter as well. They were saying that earlier intervention, kind of that we briefly touched on earlier, helped identify these individuals who might have been struggling at the very beginning with support so they could flourish later. And that's what this one's capturing. And so, I mean, we've known for a long time, with our education, with our experience, earlier intervention always has the best outcomes. And if you can have the most supports and resources earlier on, the better the outcome, the better the prognosis on almost anything.
Oh, absolutely. And we're not just talking like mental health. Like, you talk about, I mean,
education.
You talk about education. You talk about children that are born premature or with any kind of medical issue.
Things
we're talking
at work,
things
like
at
learning
work,
projects.
Absolutely. Like, early physical therapy, early occupational therapy, early, I mean, all of those things.
Yes.
The sooner you get started, the better the outcomes.
Yes.
And so, when we're looking at that statistic and we're looking at the sooner, we identify that there is potentially, or we're starting to see signs that there are, maybe anxiety is a little higher than normal, because like, I want to touch on this here too. Everybody experiences anxiety. Anxiety is normal, like normal worry. Just because you worry, just because you have a stressful season or a stressful time, doesn't automatically mean, you have an anxiety disorder. Like, that's not what we're saying here. There's a pattern, and I'm not going to get into that, because that's not, I mean, we'll probably get into that later on in a different episode when we talk about the different things that people deal with. But being able to pick up and recognize on those things, and recognize, like Kaylee mentioned with the statistics, if we're looking at how it's affecting somebody's daily life, the sooner you can intervene, the sooner we can intervene, the better the outcomes.
Yes.
It's like catching an illness before it gets bad.
Yeah.
And so I think, that ties us into, well, where do we go from here?
Yes.
What do we do to help bring those early interventions?
Yeah.
And that...
Talking about it.
Yeah.
Like we are right now.
Yeah.
Talking about it. Having open and frank conversations about what I'm experiencing, what's going on, finding your trusted few people or, just trusted people in general to have this discussion with. The more we talk about it, the less the stigma takes hold, because then you hear that it was like, yeah, I've kind of experienced that too. And it's that camaraderie. It's that you're not alone in this. Even though sometimes it really feels like you are, because your head gets so loud sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
Depending on what's going on, it's just this continual, relentless dialogue of just not so very nice things and unhelpful thoughts sometimes. And so when you speak it out loud to someone, I'm pointing to her because she's often my person. I have a small group of people that I trust with, when I am having a hard day. And we go to each other and we say, my brain's really loud today. It's really going on, and I need to talk it out. It needs to not just be in here. I need to get it out, so then it just doesn't muck up or muddy my own just every thought process.
Yeah, and I think, and getting a little vulnerable here, like, to be honest, I think part of that is, human nature a lot of times is to, well, I should be able to carry this. I have to carry this. I have to be able to deal with this. And I don't want to burden somebody else.
Yes.
I'm very guilty of that, and feeling like I'm being too much, or I'm being too extra, or I'm a therapist. I should be able to know how to handle this. Well, that's like the biggest lie out there. But I often catch myself like pushing it down or carrying it and being like, I got this. And then what ends up happening is I carry it too much, and then I feel out of control, and then I turn on myself and I start to tear myself down. And Kaylee's really good at calling me out about that and being like, yeah, that's what you're doing right now. And that's, and it's great to have people in your corner that do that. But that goes back to what she's talking about with the stigma, in that, we need to be having more open conversations. And I know that that's so hard. It's so hard to be vulnerable.
Yeah. Because
you don't want to be judged.
No.
You don't want to be judged. And a lot of times I think people look at vulnerability as weakness.
Yeah.
And they look at, one of the things we hear a lot is going and getting help as weakness. And I always flip that script, and I always challenge that. And I feel like not asking for help, not recognizing, or not asking for help, that can be more of a weakness, because then you're
isolating.
You're isolating. You're not recognizing your limits.
And it's, and again, when your brain gets so loud, sometimes you forget that you got people in, on your side. You got people in your corner, but your brain is telling you that you don't. That they're, that for whatever
you're supposed
reason,
to be able to handle this.
Yes, that you're supposed to be able to handle this, and that's not true. That is what I call a bad brain day.
Yes, and we're supposed to have this sense of community, and that we're not supposed to handle this on our own.
We're not supposed to silo.
No, and she calls it her bad brain day. I call it the scary place in my head. And so, it's very much, and it's not just like us as individuals. Like, we have friends that come to us as well. Like, I have, I guess what I'm getting at is it's important to have those people. Even if you don't have a whole group of people, at least one person, that you can go to. And, it doesn't have to be therapy. Therapy's great. I'm going to advocate for therapy all day, every day, because I feel like everybody could use therapy, because I don't feel like anybody's walking around this world right now in 2025 with their crap together. Like, I don't feel like you can. It's just my opinion. Don't feel like you can. But having a person that you can go to, that's what keeps the chaos that is in your brain, the chaos that is in your brain, at a manageable level.
Yes.
Because when it gets unmanageable is when we start to do some things that aren't healthy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I think that is one of the biggest things. Like when we talk about where to go from here, it's just talking about it and identifying supports. That's, one of the biggest things. And then sometimes it's even thinking outside the box too, is what would be, I don't know, unconventional maybe in support. So like when we're talking about people in your life that you feel comfortable with or you feel safe with, it's just taking a look at your daily life. Who do I interact with? Who do I feel like an akinness with, or do I feel comfortable with? It could be anybody in your life, and just striking up that conversation.
Right. And again, sometimes taking that first step and reaching out can be scary. But I can tell you that a lot of times when you reach out and you say, hey, I'm struggling, the other person's going to be like, oh my gosh, me too. And it usually takes just one person to reach out and to say, hey, I'm not okay. Yeah. And 9 times out of 10, your friend is going to be like, hey, what's going on?
Yeah.
And truly there for you and wanting to be there for you.
Yeah.
And so, it is the talking, it is the thinking outside of the box. And the more we talk, the more you talk, the less stigmatized it becomes.
Yes.
The less taboo it becomes. And the more normal it becomes to to have these conversations. It's so important to have that support group. It's so important to have your village around you. Because we're not meant to do this life alone.
No. No, we are not. And, and I think that on top of the 2 things we've discussed, it's another one of self-care, which is what our next episode is going to be themed on, is self-care. And what does that look like? And what is actually self-care? What does that look like for you? And it looks different for everybody. And we'll get into that a little bit more. But that is a major piece of where do we go from here, is making sure, like we've said it in another episode, making sure that you have your, or maybe we didn't, maybe I said it in my head, that could have been it too. You have your oxygen mask first on, so then you can also help other people get theirs on, so we can all work together. We have to be able to take care of ourselves, and that's part of where do we go from here, is not only helping as in a community in a systemic way, is how can I help myself? How can this is something that I utilize in my therapy, is how can I make myself 10% more comfortable? Just 10%. Let's just work there. How can I make myself 10% more comfortable? That could be changing a shirt to wear a more comfortable shirt. That could be, I get to pop in my earbuds and I get to listen to like one of my favorite songs while I do the dishes. How can I make myself 10% more comfortable? That's just one of my favorite things to ask individuals, because I get some really good answers. I really do.
I bet you do.
So, well, I think we covered a lot today. Some of it's heavy, some of it's good news, some of it's, kind of hard. But I do think that overall, we are moving in the right direction with mental health. And I do think we are moving forward and breaking down that stigma a lot more than I think we have in the last few years.
Oh, absolutely. I think we're 1,000 steps ahead from where we were back in like the early 2000s and even 5 years ago. I think we're in a much more open place than we once were. And there's a lot more attention to it. Some good, some bad, but I think we're also looking at it is becoming less taboo, and I think people are recognizing like, oh my goodness, this is important. And our world is in a mental health crisis, and so I think people are becoming more attuned to that and recognizing that this is something we need to be talking about. One of the things that I talk about a lot, and I think sometimes we don't give it the credit or the gravity that it deserves, is that your mental health is just as important as your physical health. You cannot have one without the other.
No.
And so being in tune with your mental health, checking in with your mental health, that is just as important as seeing a primary care provider. Like you have to be taking care of your mental health just as much as you do your body, because they all tie into one another.
And having those discussions with your primary care provider about how is your mental health doing and how it can affect and how it can all interplay with each other. I think having those discussions with your primary care is paramount. It is just as important as well. They are there to help you. They are there to help you in any way that they can at that point in time. And, part of that act of defiance is having that conversation, that hard conversation with your care teams.
Right. Well, thank you for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks for episode 4, where we're going to touch on self-care and what that looks like for us and some suggestions for you.
Yes.
You guys have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.